Let's talk about how Vivienne Westwood went from being a primary school teacher to becoming a world-renowned fashion designer with a brand that has such broad and mass appeal across so many different subcultures. The story starts with a young Vivienne Westwood who was juggling her career as a primary school teacher with her passion for fashion. On the weekend, she was creating her own pieces of jewelry and going to Portobello Market to sell. Her life really did change when she met Malcolm McLaren, who was a fashion and punk enthusiast, and at the time he was selling clothes in a small section of a boutique on King's Road called Paradise Garage. The two quickly fell in love and he saw something in Vivienne. At the time, she wasn't really looking to become a fashion designer, but she reluctantly decided to design pieces that he went on to sell in his store. This store became really iconic because throughout the years, it was subject to many rebrands. Malcolm went from selling in a small section of the store to owning the store, rebranding it a number of times, and in the end, the final rebrand was the store being called The World's End. Her original pieces were inspired by and appealed to the Teddy Boys subculture. Over time, her designs evolved but still had that punk rooting. Things changed when Malcolm realized that he didn't only just have a passion for fashion, he had a passion for music, and he formed and managed the band the Sex Pistols. Obviously, this was an amazing platform for Vivienne because she effectively designed all of their onstage clothing, and as they grew, so did she. The band eventually did split, and there was a realization that there was a need to pivot. And in 1981, following the final rebrand to The World's End, Vivienne presented her first runway collection, Pirates. And this was the beginning of something great. The collection pushed creative boundaries and was like nothing that had been seen before on the runway. You will not be shocked at this part of the story, but as her success grew, Malcolm became jealous. He became jealous. He started saying things like, "You will be nothing without me. You are nothing but a seamstress." And Vivienne did the right thing. She kicked that man to the curb, and thankfully she left, owning the store and owning her brand. And it was at this point that she decided to do her final rebrand, changing the name to Vivienne Westwood. And this was just the beginning of everything great. Just as they parted ways after the 1983 Witches collection, a piece from that collection was worn by Madonna, and this pushed Vivienne Westwood into becoming an international household name. One thing about Vivienne Westwood, she knew when to innovate. She knew when her designs had maybe reached their peak and it was time to change and bring in something fresh. And this is what we saw with the Autumn-Winter 87 collaboration with Harris Tweed. And this was the introduction of the long-standing brand signifiers, the tweed print and the 18th century inspired corsets. As her career progressed and her brand got bigger, one thing she really did stay true to was her activism, using her platform to speak up on meaningful issues. And one that we can all resonate with today is the problem of overconsumption. She had a motto, "Buy less, choose well, make it last," which obviously challenged consumerism. And of course, as a commercial business, this sentiment was effectively at odds with the business side. Because how do you continue to sell clothes and push out collections year after year after year, but also encourage people to be sustainable and not buy as much? Her passion for activism, coupled with her innate creativity, led her to create the Vivienne Foundation, the goal of which was to carry forward her activist missions, which she found difficult on the business side. Now, this is where the problem begins. So the foundation owns the copyrights and the intellectual property of Vivienne Westwood's designs, particularly those that predate 1993, which, if we're looking at the history, a lot of her iconic designs and archival pieces are from before that period. The Vivienne Westwood brand is very distinct from the foundation. The foundation is owned and run by family members, whereas 30% of the brand is owned by their current CEO, with the remaining 2/3 split between her husband and her estate. So in true scandalous fashion, her granddaughter Cora left the business side towards the end of last year, and she didn't leave quietly. She sent an email to all employees basically saying that the CEO bullied my grandma until her passing. My grandmother really did not like how the Vivienne Westwood business was being run. She implied that all the torment and the pain and the stress contributed to her illness. I could do a deep dive and a separate video on what on earth is going on between the foundation and the business side within Vivienne Westwood. But essentially, the CEO is running the business in a way that doesn't stay true to the true ethos of the Vivienne Westwood brand. And it opens a broader conversation within fashion as to how does one maintain the legacy of a brand once the founder disappears. That being said, the key takeaways are that Vivienne Westwood was a visionary, bringing modern punk to the mainstream and ushering in new waves of fashion. But most importantly, especially just after International Women's Day, she is a testament to the fact that it's never too late to start something new, and don't be afraid to rebrand. Rebrand, rebrand, rebrand until you get it right. Imagine if Vivienne Westwood didn't quit her job as being a primary school teacher. We would have been starved of so much fashion greatness.